All right. Nice to hear. We meet again, Vicky Carpenter. We are being so productive today, aren't we? All right, here we go. Okay, so we started we're reviewing the Chad Daybell preliminary hearing, right? We're going to break it up into manageable bits and we're going to kind of just walk through it in the days and the weeks to come. And all of this, of course, in preparation for the April 2024 trial of the Chadster, who is the biggest smarmy smucker in the world, right? He is a pud knocker. So I've had people before that have, they've sort of said, you should be more serious when you're covering these cases. Agreed. But there's something about using humor when it is applied to people who have been really horrible, who have hurt people and terrorized people, to sort of turn them into a cartoonish type of character is empowering, and it reduces their it reduces their mind game. And so for this bozo who believed, I'm talking about Chad Daybell, that he believed that he's, the Messiah, excuse me, that he's the Messiah and he's going to take his queen Jezebel and lead the 144,000. There were so many people who were terrorized by he and Lori, that kids that were Tylee was terrorized by this nut job, terrorized. So we have to reduce him to his element, and that is he's just a ridiculous object. That's all. He lacks substance. There's no notable soul in this guy. One of the texts that we read, that was read in the trial, he says, quote, "I've turned up the pain on JJ," end quote. Talking to JJ's mother. So no, this was an obscenity on every level. They're bizarre, weird sex, weird stuff. Who in the world, what adult man would ever call his appendage, his member, whatever adult man would call it, the storm? It is so inherently gross and offensive without adding in the terrorization of kids. What about the impact, the effect that Lori and this creeper had on Colby? No, they should not be given any level of humanity in terms of consideration. They should each be reduced to this caricature of a human being, that they're simply an object that is unlike a bullet coming out of a AK-47 gun, right? They're just gross and destructive and obscene. Their existence is an obscenity to fine, normal human beings. And I believe that my whole heart and soul. What they did to JJ and Tylee is evil in the purest sense of the word. Even what they did to Colby, because that was his family. That Charles was not his biological father, but his de facto father. And Charles treated him very well and gave him a life and gave him an identity. It's just unspeakable what these two did. Really unspeakable. All right. So there's enough of that editorial comment. So I know, Justice Jane, we have all been so busy today. Okay, so here we go. So we're going to go forward now with the second part of day one for the preliminary hearing that happened 3 years ago. Spent a long time coming to try to get to this trial. And so I think that this prosecutor hates Chad Daybell more, if that's imaginable, more like on a personal level. I think he hates Chad Daybell in a way that he didn't quite reach with Lori Vallow. I think he looked at Lori Vallow and he felt that maybe there was like some mental illness or whatever. But I think with Chad Daybell, I think he looks at Chad Daybell as an abomination who used his religion. I'm talking about the prosecutor's religion, used his religion to create the greatest evil and the greatest atrocities that Idaho had ever seen. I think he hates him on a really visceral, personal level. So I think there's going to be a lot of fireworks at this next trial. All right. So everybody good? If y'all are ready for this, I guess we'll go.
Did you witness another examination that day?
Yes.
Oh, wait a minute.
Do you remember approximately when that examination started?
In the afternoon.
Okay. What did you observe in that second examination?
We did the second examination.
Melted green bucket with.
That's where we need to start. Sorry about that.
That he was inquiring into facts of the investigation. The court initially overruled the objection and stated that I would allow the questions pertaining to who was spoken to, whether that conversation was recorded, when the conversation took place in the course of the investigation. I will stand by my ruling that
Oh, you smarmy smucker.
Continue to inquire of the witness.
Everybody say it. Hashtag smarmy smucker.
When it comes to the substance of those interviews or inquiries of the witnesses and or family, I'm going to sustain Mr. Robb's objection going forward that those will be unallowed or disallowed based upon hearsay. I think there's also a scope of the direct that would also come into play at that point. So, Mr. Pryor, if you'd like to proceed with the questioning of Mr. or Detective Hermosillo on cross, you may do so.
Thank you, Your Honor. Detective, when we were on the subject of Melanie Gibb, you spoke with her as well, is that correct?
That's correct.
Was that a recorded conversation?
I think one of them, the last one was.
Well,
when I spoke with her, we were on the phone. She was in Arizona and I was on a cell phone.
did you ever have the occasion? Now, my recollection, and correct me if I'm wrong, officer, my notes seem to reflect that you said you spoke with Melanie Gibb once. Was I incorrect in my notes?
No, I had spoken with her once in person.
Oh, once in person, okay.
And then on the phone the rest of the times.
Okay, and the date that you spoke to her in person, where was that location?
That was in Salt Lake City.
And the date of
or
that?
Provo, I believe. Provo.
And that discussion in Salt Lake City was on what date, sir?
I don't recall the date.
Okay, all right. Now, you said it was Salt Lake City, it was Provo, was it not?
It was Provo area, yeah.
Provo area, down to Salt Lake City, correct? And as part of that discussion, you drove down to Salt Lake City to interview her, is that correct?
That's correct.
And accompanying you on that trip was Lieutenant Ball, is that correct?
That's correct.
And also accompanying you on that trip was Mr. Wood, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And do you have any recollection of during that one-to-one face-to-face interview between you, Mr. Wood, Lieutenant Ball, and yourself and Melanie Gibb, was that recorded at any time?
I believe Lieutenant Ball had recorded that conversation.
You believe or you know?
I believe he recorded the conversation.
I agree, Fancy
You did not
Nancy.
record it.
Yeah,
No, sir.
Who
terrible.
was the head investigator of this investigation at this point?
I was the lead investigator,
Okay.
but he was the supervisor on scene.
Okay, and as the lead investigator, you chose not to record that conversation. Is that correct?
I did not record that conversation.
And as the lead investigator,
Detective
you chose not
Hermosia
to record that
was
conversation.
so
That was
perfect
affirmative.
on the stand.
That was an
He's a-
affirmative
he's a
decision
great
not
guy.
to record the
Objection
conversation.
asked and answered.
I didn't get the
Sustained.
question.
You can move on, Mr. Pryor.
And then there was a phone conversation with Ms. Gibb. Is that correct?
That is correct.
When was that?
That was in December sometime.
Is there a reason you don't know the specific dates? In a number of instances here, we've had occasions where you seem to suggest the month, but you don't know the specific date. Is there a reason behind that?
Those weren't super important dates to me. I interviewed a lot of people throughout the last 8 months.
Okay, and as a preparation for this hearing, did you review your reports and your supplements as part of your preparation to testify today?
I did.
Okay. And in spite of reading that supplement and refreshing your recollection, you still don't remember the specific dates and times?
Sir, forgive me. I can't remember every single word for an 8-month investigation on
Right,
dates and times.
And with all due respect to you, sir, I'm not questioning your integrity and I'm not questioning your honesty.
Oh, sure
But quite
you
honestly, there's a
are,
lot of
Chatty
information here,
Daddy.
Is there not?
There is.
And there's a lot of things that are said as part of this investigation, is there not?
There is.
Okay. And I'd like to go back to the time on November 27th, I believe, or maybe, was it 26th? I'm sorry, it's November 26th. And even myself, I get dates wrong. But on November 26th, when you interviewed Mr. Daybell, you said that Mr. Daybell said he didn't know Lori Vallow very well. Is that correct?
That is correct.
It's not recorded. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Is it possible that he said, I know her? And you said, how well do you know her? And he responded, well, I don't know her.
Objection, hearsay.
I'm asking a question as to whether this is possible he said this. And if he's going down the road of hearsay, Judge, this has already been ruled on.
Your Honor, it calls for hearsay.
Got to be overruled.
I'm going to overrule the objection. Mr. Pryor, you may continue with the question. I believe the question was, is it possible?
Right. Is it possible that Mr. Daybell said, I don't know her as well as Alex?
No, that's not what I remember.
Okay.
Look at Chad Daybell's
you're-
face right there. Would you? Who wants to slap
But
that
you've
smile
already
off his
acknowledged
face?
that your recollection and a number of facts may not be completely accurate. Is that correct?
What a
Objection,
little
argumentative.
Sustained.
smarmy smucker.
Do you have a clear recollection of every statement made by every single witness in this case? Sir?
Objection, argumentative.
I'll allow the question.
Just
Do you have a clear recollection of every statement of every witness made in this case, sir?
No.
Do you have a clear recollection of every date and the substance and time of every date as part of your investigation in this case?
Objection, relevance.
Mr. Pryor,
It goes to his recollection, it goes to bias, Judge.
I'm going to overrule the objection. You may answer the question, Mr. Detective Hermosillo.
Would you ask it again, please?
Just the recollection of every date and time in this case as part of your investigation.
No, I don't.
And you would agree with me that it's possible that Mr. Daybell said that I don't know her as well.
Objection, asked and answered.
no, I wouldn't agree with you.
Mr. Pryor, there's an objection as to asked and answered.
Judge, I laid the foundation, went down the same road, but the question is slightly different. Is it possible that you made a mistake about whether or not Mr. Daybell stated what you claimed he stated?
Mr. Wood,
Your Honor, at this point, defense is clearly trying to get in a statement of his own client. That's hearsay. There's no exception for it. If he wants to get in Mr. Daybell's testimony, he can put Mr. Daybell on the stand.
I'm going to
Sustained.
sustain the objection on the ground it's been asked and answered. I think it was asked the exact same way. I don't think he answered it in the way that you wanted him to answer it, but it has been asked and answered. Let's move on.
Okay.
Let's
Now,
move
officer, your
on.
testimony originally was that the last time that they saw JJ was the 22nd of September. Is that
Objection, that's vague reference to they. Doesn't state who that is.
So the objection is to foundation.
Yes.
Mr. Pryor, do you want to lay a little bit more foundation before engaging in a conversation on that date?
As part of your investigation, you were able to ascertain a date based on reviewing pictures and evidence of when you believe the last time JJ Vallow was seen. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And as part of your testimony to you today, you said you believe that the last day was the 22nd of September. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Now, as part of your investigation, did you contact JJ's school?
Yes, we did.
And as part of your investigation, were you able to ascertain the last day that the school had him registered and attending school?
Yes,
And that was the September 23rd, was it not?
that is not correct.
Would it surprise
Yes,
and that was the September 23rd, was it not?
that is not correct.
Would it surprise you to learn that there are statements about JJ Vallow attending school on the 23rd?
Initially, we talked to the school and we had an
I do too, Fancy
unexcused
Nancy.
absence on the 23rd, but an excused absence on the 24th. So in the initial part of the investigation, we believe that JJ may have gone to school on the 23rd, but later learned that was not the case.
And as part of your investigation,
Where'd that
into
smile go,
issue,
Chad Daybell? Not
did you
smiling
record
anymore, why?
that conversation with any of the officials?
I did not personally speak to the school.
Do you know who spoke to the school?
Detective Dave Hope.
Now, you talked and made reference to hundreds of pictures and videos. Do you remember saying that?
That is correct.
Did you provide those hundreds of pictures and videos to the prosecuting attorney?
I assumed that he had gotten the photographs that we have gotten.
Okay, but that wasn't the question. The question is you made mention of reviewing hundreds of photos and hundreds of videos. Okay.
Through-
Objection, I think he's misstating the witness's earlier testimony.
Mr. Pryor, will you repeat the question? And Mr. Wood, if you believe he is misstating the witness's testimony, I'll allow you to make the objection again.
Judge, the witness had previously said that as part of his investigation, he looked at hundreds of videos and pictures. I'm inquiring as to whether or not all of those videos, those hundreds of videos and hundreds of pictures have been provided to Mr. Wood as part of this case.
I'll allow the question. I'll direct the witness to answer.
This man Pryor
During the
is
course of the
so hard to
investigation, there
take.
have been numerous people that had played
Horrible
YouTube
guy.
videos, friends that had uploaded things to the internet, things of that nature, which we saw Tylee or JJ on. The videos and photographs that we had obtained, the prosecutor has copies of.
Okay. But then other videos that you've used as part of your investigation that were on YouTube. And when you're talking about these videos, you're talking about people in the community who have posted videos and audio who have, this has drawn a significant amount of local attention. Would you agree with me?
I would agree.
And there's been a significant amount of people posting videos, posting pictures, posting audio in Fremont and Madison County. Would you agree with that, sir?
Yes.
Now, as part of your search warrant, initially to go into the, and there were 3 apartments, if my recollection is correct, and please correct me if I make a mistake. There were 3 apartments that you sought and obtained a search warrant for, is that correct?
That's correct.
And the date that you sought that search warrant was when, sir?
November 27th, 2019.
And the purpose of that search warrant was to search to determine whether or not Joshua J. Vallow was present in any of those apartments. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Was the purpose of that search warrant to obtain information and gather evidence in other regards?
No,
The sole purpose was to go in there to look and see if there was a human person in any of those units. Is that correct?
We were looking for any person in those units and to see if we can find out the whereabouts of JJ.
Okay, was it part of that? Did that search warrant scope include the ability to obtain and take evidence and information to help support you in a later time?
Yes, it did.
Okay. Now, when you searched Alex's apartment, and that was 107, is that right?
Alex was staying in 175. That's where his belongings were.
In 175?
Yes.
And who was the person who owned 175 or rented 175, excuse me?
On the rental agreement, I believe it was Alex Cox that was on 175.
Okay, and what number was Lori Vallows?
107.
And you also went into 174, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and Melanie Boudreaux's was what?
174.
If I could have just a moment, Judge.
You may. Mr. Pryor, Mr. Pryor, if you do not want that to be on the record, you need to push that button right in front of the microphone there, so that green light is not on while you're talking. If you hold it, you need to hold it down. Thank you.
So in
No.
175, was there any indication that Alex Cox had any belongings in there whatsoever of any kind?
In 175?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Were there any indications that Alex Cox had belongings in 107?
107 was vacant.
Okay. Was there any indication that Lori Vallow had ever resided in 175?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have a length of time as to how long she was in 175?
No.
Okay. Are you of the opinion that Lori Vallow and Alex Cox were living together in Unit 175 at some time?
Objection calls for speculation.
Do you have any personal information as part of your investigation that Lori Vallow and Alex Cox were residing together in Unit 175?
I have no information that they lived there at the same time.
Okay. They may have lived there at different times.
You're asking him to speculate.
You're suggesting?
I'm suggesting when we did the surveillance, that's where Lori Vallow was residing. And we had
She was
located
residing where?
in 175.
Okay. All right. And
He's
we're gonna
trying
get
to
the
trip 'em
surveillance,
up.
So you talked about that in a minute, if you may. So at any point, as part of your surveillance, did you see her residing in 107?
No.
As part of your surveillance, was there a recording of any of the surveillance tapes?
No.
Did you record anything?
No.
How many hours would you suggest you did in surveillance of the Vallow apartment 175?
Oh, 15, 20 hours worth maybe.
Okay. You talked about phone records initially in regards to the November 27th inquiry. Whose phone records specifically were you looking at as part of your initial investigation?
Lori Vallow's and Chad Daybell's.
Did you inquire as to Alex Cox's phone records?
I believe we did. I'm not sure if it was on the 27th or not.
Okay. All right. Did you inquire as to when Lori Vallow and Alex Cox both moved here together? Approximately what date?
Yes.
When was that?
1st of September.
And you made some reference to the relationship between Lori and Alex. Do you have specific information that would suggest they had a very close relationship?
Yes.
And what information is that, officer?
Information we had obtained through Gilbert, Arizona, through their investigation.
And when Lori Vallow chose to move here on the 1st of September, Alex Cox at the same time moved here as well, did he not?
He did.
Okay. And in fact, they lived together for a portion of the time, did they not?
I'm not aware of that.
Okay. Is it possible that they did live together?
Objection, Your Honor. I fail to see how this is relevant.
He's trying to
There's been
trick
an objection as to
Hermesia.
relevance.
Judge, I think I'm just going to move on. I think.
Okay.
I can
Good.
inquire
Move
in another
on,
manner
Chatty
about this
Daddy.
evidence through another witness. Thank you.
Thank you.
He did. Hermesia, though, was great. He was solid as a rock. And
I'd
it's
like
so
to turn our
bizarre.
attention now to the picture or the demonstrative evidence, and I believe it's exhibit number 10. And if you would be so kind again to get the pointer out and point where Mr. Daybell's vehicle was parked.
So the court record is clear. Exhibit number 10 has remained up on an easel for the entire time on cross-examination. And the inquiry is about exhibit 10 that still exists on the easel. Go
Now,
ahead.
how was the car parked in the driveway, officer?
It was backed into the driveway.
Tanya,
facing
he
the
looks
west.
exactly like Peter Griffin.
So the car was backed
That's
in.
hilarious.
Was it all the way to the garage or was
I
it
assume
partially
you're
in
talking
the
about
driveway?
Family Guy, right?
Sir, if you look at this was taken that morning,
Okay.
so that's exactly where he was parked that morning when he was sitting in the vehicle.
Well, I
Just
appreciate you pointing that out to me. What I would like you to do is verbalize how far close to the garage was the car in relation to the garage.
Oh my God, Pryor.
10 feet.
Really?
So 10 feet from the door of the garage towards the street, is that correct?
Rough guess, yes.
And Judge, may I have permission to move freely towards that exhibit?
I wish that the
There's
judge
another
would say no.
pointer, I think, that's over there. Is there not, bailiff? Is there just a... All right. If you're going to move over there, Mr. Pryor, number one, I'm going to require you to wear a mask. And then number two, do you plan on touching the exhibit?
No, Judge, in light of the court's concerns, I think what I'll do is I'll try to talk this witness through this as well, rather than, and I see where the court is going, and I agree. If I'm unable to do that, then I may request that the bailiff give me another pointer and we do it that way. I agree with the court.
Okay.
So in
I wish
regards
this
to the,
judge was
car
still
being
on the
parked,
case. I really like
and
this
I will
judge.
represent to you, officer, that I've been out to that house probably 6 or 7 times. How many times have you been out to the house?
God, I can't take this defense
15 or
attorney.
20.
Okay, when is the last time you were out there?
The last search warrant I served on the residence.
Okay. Now, on that day, can you give me the date and the time, the month and the date of when you were doing the search again? It was in June, correct?
Which search are you referring to?
The search that excavated and removed the evidence from behind the tree and the pet cemetery.
That wasn't
correct, June 9th.
evidence, sir. Those were
And on June
children.
9th, I'm looking at that picture and you say that's a picture taken of that situation. Is that correct?
Yes,
And I'm looking at the tree and the tree looks like it has foliage on it, correct?
correct.
Now, when I'm in the driveway and I'm standing, and quite honestly, I'll represent to you that I did the same thing you did. And the view to the tree back there where they found one of the remains is not particularly visible. So your testimony is that it is.
Objection that he's just testifying now.
The court is going to completely disregard any testimony or any information that's being provided by the attorney, Mr. Wood. If you're laying a little bit of foundation here for a question, Mr. Pryor, you may do so,
Okay.
but let the record reflect your testimony is obviously not
All right.
evidence.
So is it still your testimony that there's a visible line of sight between where the automobile was parked and that tree back in the corner where there were remains excavated?
I never gave the testimony there was a clear line of sight. I simply said that he was looking towards the pond area.
Oh, okay. So he wasn't necessarily, he looked over there. Did he look anywhere else at that point?
I saw him looking towards the pond area.
Okay. But the question was, did he look anywhere else?
I'm sure he did look other
Okay, so he was
places.
looking around. Is that correct?
No, sir, that's not correct.
He made
Stand by your
motions to
guns,
look in different
Hermosia.
directions. Is that correct?
He wasn't looking as intently anywhere else as he was towards the pond area.
And you can agree with me that it's somewhat alarming if someone shows up at your property and decides to bring a number of people to start digging up your property. Would that cause anyone concern?
Yes,
Yeah,
Okay.
especially when there's dead
Now,
babies in your yard,
I'd
Pryor.
like to go to the, back to the tree behind what's called the pond area. When we're talking about the excavation of the pond area, how deep down was it that the remains were found in the pond area back there?
I'd guess 6-8 inches
Shallow.
shallow.
And then in regards to the pet cemetery, how far down into the ground in the pet cemetery?
I couldn't testify to that. I wasn't there when they
Okay.
began the initial
Fair-
digging.
Fair enough. And based on the 25, I'm sorry, I misstated that, didn't I? 15 trips that you took out there? Is that what you said?
Yes, sir.
15 to 20? On the
Yes.
15 to 20 trips out there, do you have a recollection of how big that pet cemetery is?
Not every trip that I made out there was to the backyard.
Okay. Do you have a recollection or an estimate, having been out, you've been next to the pet cemetery, correct?
That's correct.
And you viewed it, is that correct?
That's correct.
And you're trained as a police officer to recall facts and obtain evidence, is that correct?
That's correct.
So when you're looking at a site where they're exhuming evidence, it would seem fair to assume that you would have an idea about how large of an area this pet cemetery was. So can you tell me how large the pet cemetery is?
I didn't worry about measuring that. That's what the FBI recovery team was for.
Now, you saw a marker on the pet cemetery that marked the pet cemetery of a dog, is that correct?
A dog was dug up there, yes.
But you saw a post and like a monument or a picture of a dog.
That's correct.
Right? And that was basically almost like a headstone, is that correct?
I couldn't tell you what the statue was
Okay.
for.
But still, you don't know what the statue was?
No, what it was for.
Oh, what it was for. What was it a statue of?
I believe it was a dog.
Okay. So there's no doubt that this was a pet cemetery, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And there's no doubt that this was a well-defined fire pit that was back there, correct?
Correct.
This wasn't a fire pit that was created out of the blue. It was a fire pit that was well established for a significant amount of time. Would you agree with that?
Objection calls for speculation.
There's a question. If there's speculation in the answer, I'll direct the witness to not answer. But if the witness knows the answer to that question.
Judge, may I redefine my inquiry a little bit to
You
help in
may.
that regard?
You may.
Thank you, Your Honor. When you're referring to a fire pit back there, was there an actual circular area where there was a fire pit?
That's correct.
Was there also an area where there was numerous places where they were burning various items? Is that correct?
I did not see that.
Okay. Now, you talked a little bit about your experience in identifying human remains, and that it offers a unique smell when you see human remains. Do you recall testifying about that?
I didn't testify to my experience on identifying human remains. I testified to the smell of a decomposing body.
Okay, and that is a very unique smell, is it not?
It is.
Have you ever had an occasion to smell what the smell of burning flesh smells like?
No.
Objection relevance. The witness never testified to that.
Well, he talked about the fact that when he observed the the area of the pet cemetery that he observed burned flesh and burned bones. And I think I ought to be able to inquire as to where his knowledge of making that representation comes from.
Just so I'm clear, I believe that the testimony pertaining to a smell came from the first uncovering of a body, and that's not the same place as the pet cemetery. So, Mr. Pryor, with that information, tell me where you're going.
Judge, I just want to, I want to inquire, Judge, as to where he gains his knowledge of being able to identify that the remains were actually burned and that that bones were burned. And I'd like to know where the source of that knowledge is.
So if you want to ask questions about his background on burned flesh or whatever else, you can do so. I'll let you do that. Mr. Wood, any other comments?
No.
Do you have any experience in identifying burned flesh and burned bones?
Define experience. I
Have
mean,
you been part of investigations that have involved other burned bones or other burned flesh?
no,
Have you ever had an occasion to smell what it's like when human remains are burned or scorched?
yes,
Okay, and that lays off a very distinct smell, does it not?
it does.
And it's beyond pungent. It's a very, very easily identifiable smell when human remains are burned, is it not?
It is.
And that's something that would be very noticeable if in fact human remains were burned. It's very identifiable. You would agree with that, would you not?
Objection calls for speculation.
Judge, he testified about his experience. I think I ought to be able to inquire as to whether it's easily identifiable.
I'll allow the question. If the witness knows the answer to the question, he can answer. If he does not, he can say he doesn't know.
All right. Do you know whether it's easily identifiable in your experience?
Freshly burned flesh?
Any
This-
burned flesh.
This had been sitting out there for quite a while, so
Okay.
the overwhelming smell of the decomposition is what I smelled.
And I appreciate that, but what I'm asking you about is whether or not the smell of burning flesh is a very identifiable smell.
That's right.
And it's and it's not something that's easily disguised. You would agree with that, correct?
I would agree.
Okay, now let's go back to the chart. And let's go back to, excuse me, I said chart, Judge. I want to say exhibit number 10, the demonstrative evidence.
Noted.
Thank you, Your Honor. And I'll slow down, Judge. I think I'm getting a nod from our friend at the clerk saying for me to slow down. So, Madam Clerk, I will pace a little better. Thank you for your patience. When I'm looking at that aerial view, and I'd like you to take the pointer and put it at the front where Mr. Daybell's car is parked.
Diane, I couldn't agree
Thanks.
more.
Directly across the
Completely
street, are
obnoxious.
there any residents?
And the little
There
smirks
was a
and
resident.
smiles.
Do you know
Ugh.
the owners of those residents?
Yeah, he's
No, I do
hard to
not.
take.
Okay, did you interview them?
I did not personally.
Did anybody interview them?
I can't answer to that.
Okay. Now, directly across where the pond is, we'll go to the pond and then we'll head towards the road. Is there a residence there?
There is.
And there's no obstruction of the view of that residence to the pond. Would you agree with that?
I can't testify to that, sir.
Do you see any trees that are blocking the view from that house across the street to the pond?
I can't see what's on the other side of the road
Okay,
based on
fair
this.
enough, fair enough. And now I'd like you to put the pointer on the pet cemetery. And from the pet cemetery, go to 1900. No, I'm sorry, go to the other street, not 1900, that street. And I'm trying to recall, and I'm sorry, my memory is the same thing. I'm trying to remember the name of the street. The name of the street is what?
200 north?
200 North, that's right. And across from the pet cemetery, directly across from the pet cemetery on the other side of the street is another residence, is there not?
There is.
And then if you take the house and you go on the corner of the house that's sticking out, and almost kitty corner 200 and 1900, could you put the marker on that as well?
200 and 1900?
Just in the right there. Now, if you go on the opposite side of the street, there's a residence there as well, is there not?
Over here?
Yes.
Yes.
And then a kitty corner from the Daybell house.
That's what I was
There's a white
thinking,
residence
Fancy
across the
Nancy.
street as well, is there not?
But he's
Your
going
Honor, I'm
to
gonna
totally
object.
turn
This
off the jury.
exceeds
They're
the
going to
scope of
they're going to
the
be
direct examination. We never spoke about neighbors or
They're-
houses outside of the Daybell property.
they're going to have an
This is the
aversion
last question I'll allow,
just to
Mr.
him
Pryor.
being a
All right.
jerk,
Is
right?
there a residence kitty corner from the Daybell residence?
Where Chad's daughter lives, is that where you're talking?
Well, thank you for that, but yes, where Emma lived at one point.
Yes, right down here there is.
Right. So if I count correctly, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 residences surrounding the Daybell residence. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Specifically, who was present at the excavation at the pond? Do you have a recollection of who exactly was there?
No, I do not.
Okay. Do you have a recollection of who exactly was at the pet cemetery?
Not everybody. No, I do not.
Do you have a broad estimate of how many people were there?
50, 30, 50, somewhere in there.
35 to 50 people?
That's
And
accurate.
those were a combination of the Rexburg Police Department?
Rexburg Police, FBI, and Fremont County.
How many FBI agents do you recollect being there?
I can't recall. I can't answer that.
Did you have an occasion to interview David Warwick?
We did.
Was that a recorded conversation?
That was the same time Melanie Gibb was interviewed.
So the question was, again, was that a recorded
I
conversation?
believe it was by Lieutenant Ball.
And you interviewed Ian Pawlowski,
Yes,
and you interviewed Melanie Bordeaux, is that right?
that's correct.
Hi,
No,
Bling.
she's going by
Welcome.
Pawlowski, is that correct? They're married, I guess, right?
Yes,
And again, were those interviews recorded?
they were.
And Judge, if I could have just a moment to review my notes, may I?
You may.
Thank you, Your Honor.
If you're going to speak to your client, please push that button.
Judge, I think that's all I have at this point. Thank you, Your Honor.
Mr. Wood, it is approximately 5 minutes to noon. Would you like to do redirect right now, or do you want to take a break right now and do redirect after lunch?
Your Honor, if we do any redirect, we'll wait till after lunch.
We're going to take a recess right now, then we'll reconvene at 1 p.m. And at that point, we will start redirect with Mr. Wood and the witness, Detective Hermosillo. We'll be back here in an hour.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right.
A little over 28 years.
What is your current title?
My current title is I'm the lieutenant over investigations.
Okay. Have you completed the post academy?
I have. I hold a basic, intermediate, advanced, and a management certificate. Also, I am a graduate from the FBI National Academy 2015.
Detective, for your work at the Rexburg Police Department, were you involved in the investigation of the disappearance of JJ Vallow and Tyree Ryan?
Yes,
Detective, were you present at Chad Daybell's residence on June 9th of 2019?
I was.
Okay, what were you there for?
We were there to conduct a search warrant at that residence.
Okay. Are you aware what, if anything, was discovered on his property?
I am.
What was it?
The remains of 2 bodies.
Okay.
A complete
You know if,
nightmare, the kind
those
of thing that
remains were
only
sent to
exists
the
in horror
Ada
movies.
County Coroner's Office.
Yes.
How do you know that?
I was personally involved in taking them to Ada County.
Okay.
Yeah, Ada County Coroner's Office.
Okay.
I'm going to interject here for just a second. Something, to remember, because I think it's important to remember that we do realize, the first victim and then the ancillary victims, the loved ones, the people that cared for the original actual victim. But one group of victims that is very often overlooked and not disregarded, mostly overlooked, it is the first responders, the police officers and detectives that have to respond to the scene. Many of them get pretty numb. There's a lot of trauma involved in people that work homicide, and also another another legal role where we see an awful lot of complex trauma is traffic police that are responding to wrecks and things like that, accidents. But in cases involving children, those officers and first responders, the ambulance drivers and such, those people deal with a great deal of trauma. And I know that in the Chris Watts case, that particular crime scene was enough that it caused 2 seasoned detectives to quit the force and retire, go on Social Security, because they couldn't overcome what they had witnessed. They couldn't get away from it. So it is important, it's imperative really, for people that are responding to these scenes, especially where there are children, young people involved. It's imperative that they get the proper kind of, debriefing and then later mental health follow up. It's really important if they want to be able to continue to live unburdened. And it does sound, it's hard to imagine, because their job, a part of their job is to protect the public from witnessing anything there at the crime scene, to shelter people. They did that in the Gabby Petito case. They went to great lengths to shelter and make sure that the helicopter and whatnot could not get any visual video of the discovery. So these police officers, it's a war zone, and we should remember they go above and beyond the call of duty in these cases that involve young people and kids. So they could always use, an extra prayer. It's a very difficult task that they have, managing and responding to these scenes of nightmarish, tragedy.
What day did you take those to the coroner's office?
We took the remains to the coroner's office on June 10th
Of what year?
of this year.
Okay, so 2020?
Yep.
Did you continue to work on this case on June 12th of 2020?
Correct.
What did you do that day?
On that particular day, myself, Detective Ray Hermosillo, Detective Kakamanu from the Fremont County Sheriff's Office, and Fremont County Coroner Brenda Dye went back to the Ada County Coroner's Office, where we received and took in evidence that was the state lab had, or the coroner's office had retrieved from the bodies.
Okay. Were you involved in actually loading said evidence into the coroner's truck that day?
Yes.
Were you able to personally observe the evidence and/or the packaging it was in?
Yes.
Do you know who was in the coroner's truck?
The driver of the vehicle, of the coroner's truck, was Detective Kakimanu with Fremont County Sheriff's Office, and then Fremont County Coroner Brenda Dye was a passenger in the vehicle.
Okay. And where were you during the transportation of the evidence?
Myself and Detective Hermosillo were in another vehicle traveling with them.
And did you ever lose sight of the coroner's truck?
No.
Did the coroner's truck ever stop prior to arriving at the state lab?
It may have stopped at some traffic lights, but that would have been the only stops.
Okay. Once you arrived at the state lab, what did you do?
Once we arrived at the state lab, we met with somebody outside, a representative from the state lab. We then took the property out of the back of the vehicle and then walked it inside the Idaho State Forensic Laboratory.
Okay. So were you personally involved in moving the property from the coroner's truck to the state lab?
Yes,
Were you able then to view the evidence and/or the packaging it was in?
I did.
Was it in the same condition it was in when you loaded it into the coroner's truck from the Ada County Coroner's Office?
Yes.
Do you know generally the evidence you were involved in transporting?
It was quite a bit of biological evidence. There was some garbage bags. There was some duct tape. Quite a bit was biological samples.
And when you say biological evidence, what do you mean by that?
Swabs. There were fingernail clippings, fingernail swabs, and those type of things.
Okay.
Excuse me? Okay.
Once the evidence was taken into the state lab, what, if anything, did you do?
Once the evidence was placed in the state lab, or taken inside the state lab, I then went to a location with one of the property management people there. That evidence hadn't been checked into the Rexburg Police Department yet because I had just received it and we were still in Boise. So I had to sit down. I had to get my office on the phone. I talked to Sergeant Colette Davison with the Rexburg Police Department. I went piece by piece of evidence and described to her what that piece was, and she then entered it into the computer system back home, or back in Rexburg, and it was assigned a number. And then once I had that number, I then gave that to the representative from the Idaho Forensic Laboratory, and they then took custody of it.
Okay. Your Honor, I'd ask that the witness be handed State's Exhibit 11.
You've marked that, Mr. Wood?
I have.
Judge, could we approach for a minute?
You may. We're going to go back in chambers, though. I think because the plexiglass, it requires the attorneys to speak so loudly that it's really hard to keep it silent. So we can go back in chambers, which is fine.
All right. I
I'll
think
let
I have to
that,
establish a couple things, Your Honor.
that's fine.
Detective, do you have State's Exhibit 11 in your hand?
Yes,
Have you seen that document before?
I have.
And are you familiar with that document?
I am.
Can you look on page 2 and tell me if that document is signed under penalty of perjury?
It is.
And who does that document, what organization does that document purport to be from?
This document is from the Idaho State Police Forensic Services.
Your Honor, I'd move to admit State's Exhibit 11 into evidence for purposes of identity.
For purposes of identity, Judge, there's no objection.
It will be admitted for purposes of identity.
Your Honor, I'd ask that the defendant be handed what's been marked as State's Exhibit 12.
Mr. Lee, did you take the
Witness. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Exhibit 12 will be handed to the witness.
Thank you. Detective, do you have Exhibit 5 in front of you? Or I apologize, Exhibit 12 in front of you?
I do.
Do you recognize that document?
Yes.
Have you had a chance to review it?
Yes.
What organization does that document purport
This
to be from?
This is from the Idaho State Police Forensic Services.
Can you look on page 2 of that document and tell me if it is signed under penalty of perjury?
It is.
Your Honor, the state would move for State's Exhibit 12 to be entered into evidence pursuant to Rule 5.1 for
Mr. Pryor,
purposes of identity.
For identification purposes, Judge, there's no objection.
for identification purposes, it will be admitted. Exhibit 12.
Your Honor, the state would ask that State's Exhibit 13 be shown to the defense, then handed to the witness.
Exhibit 13 will be handed to the defense counsel.
Just keep track of it.
It's really astonishing how it seems like this just happened yesterday, doesn't it? It was really after we followed the case for so long while they were looking for JJ and Tylee, it was such a momentous moment, to get to this point.
Exhibit 12 is being handed to the witness. Excuse me, Exhibit 13.
And now here we are, we've got the trial
You have
just
State's
within a
Exhibit
few
13 in front of
months.
you.
It'll be here.
I do.
Do you recognize that document?
Yes.
Have you seen it before?
Yes.
Who does that document purport to be from?
It is from the Idaho State Police Forensic Services.
And can you look on page 2 of that document and tell me if it's signed under penalty of perjury?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, the state moves that State's Exhibit 13 be entered into evidence pursuant to Rule 5.1 for purposes of identity.
No objection, Judge.
Exhibit 13 will be admitted for purposes of identity.
Thank you. The state has no further questions for Detective Paul.
Cross-examination, Mr.
Judge.
Pryor.
Thank you, Judge. Thank you very much. Lieutenant Paul, the items that are referenced in the reports, the swabs and all of that, initially thank you. Were those items obtained by you? Did you do the swabs or was that someone else?
That was somebody else.
And those folks provided you with the with the property, is that correct?
Correct.
And can you just briefly describe how you were provided that property? Was it on site at Mr. Daybell's house or where?
Well, I guess I'm not sure which part you're talking about. Was
Well, let's
it at
talk
the
about-
lab or at the house?
The swabs that were obtained,
Okay,
okay? Those were done where?
they were done at the Ada County Coroner's Office.
Okay. Now, the other evidence that you made reference to, that you transported to the I believe the lab to coroners to be with the folks from Fremont County. Prior to that being transported, whose care and custody were those items in?
Be the county coroner.
Okay. So at some point, there was a transport originally from where the items were obtained to the county coroner. Were you part and parcel of that transport?
I did not transport those items personally. That was transported by Fremont County Coroner Brenda Dye and Detective Vince Kaikamanu.
The last name again?
Kaikamanu?
Mr. Wood, do you mind spelling Kayakamani for the record so that
What in
we
the
can all
hell
have that clear
is
for right
this
now?
guy laughing at?
Does anybody
What?
know the spelling of
He
that?
has no right to
I can
smile
guess,
in this
but I don't know
courtroom.
that I can spell it correctly.
Oh my gosh.
I-A-K-A-M-A-N-U.
What a jerk. He is a smarmy
Thank you.
smucker. You know what, Chad?
May I-
You're not an attorney, Buster.
Thank you.
I don't know what you're smiling about.
So at some
I don't know
point
why
on the
you're
site,
acting like, ugh.
We're going to call him Detective
I'm going to
K.
be quiet now.
Okay.
And the coroner obtained the items from the site and took them to the coroner's office. And at some point, you went from the coroner's office to.
Oh my God. I'm
Correct.
so triggered.
Okay.
Him
And
laughing
at all
like that.
times
I'm
from
so
the
triggered.
initial, obtaining those items, on what day did you obtain those items?
We would have obtained them items on the 12th of June,
And then on the 12th, you took those directly to the,
Idaho State Forensics Laboratory.
right, okay. And at no time did those items lose sight or at
No.
no time did you, right. No further questions, Judge. Thank you very much.
And please
Thank you, Mr.
notice
Pryor. Mr. Wood, any redirect?
No,
the
Your Honor.
detective did not
Thank you, Detective
smile.
Ball.
The
You can be
agent
excused
did
from the
not
witness
smile. Nobody smiled except these two
Mr. Wood, can this
people
witness
at
be
the
excused from the
defense
court?
portal.
Yes. No objection.
Okay.
My heart is broken for Kay and Larry Woodcock. It's just
Court's going to take just a moment for cleaning of the witness
obscenity of
stand.
this guy is just incredible. Did anybody else get triggered? God, he's so
Thank
just
you.
so
Mr.
hard
Wood, you
to
may call
take.
your next witness.
State calls David Stubbs.
Can I get Mr. Stubbs' title, please?
Detective.
Thank you. Mr. Wood, is that exhibit that's on the easel necessary for right now, or can we move that out of the way?
You know, Your Honor, we can move it out of the way.
Why don't we just set it up against the wall, facing the wall for right now, to give a little bit of room? Detective Stubbs, if you'll stand here in front of the plexiglass, raise your right arm and face the clerk.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give in this cause now and shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Detective Stubbs, you can have a seat right here at the witness stand. Once you enter this cubicle, we'll allow you to remove your mask. Thank you. If you'll pull that microphone down a little bit and aim it up towards your chin, we're keeping a record. Mr. Wood, you may inquire when you're ready.
Thank you. Detective, can you state your name and spell it for the record?
David Stubbs, last name Stubbs.
Thank you. What is your occupation?
I am a police detective sergeant with the detective division for the Rexford Police Department.
How many years have you been a detective?
Detective since the year 2000.
And how long have you been a police officer? Or how long have you worked for the Rexford Police?
Approximately 25 years.
And are you post-certified?
Correct.
All right. Do you hold any certificates of training in electronic forensics?
I do. I'm certified as a operator and analyst in the Celebrite systems. Also, I have certificates in access data systems. I do have training in multiple other data systems as well.
Are you a part of the Idaho Crimes Against Children unit?
I am part of the State of Idaho Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force, yes.
Thank you. How did you become involved in the investigation regarding the search for J.J. Vallow and Tylee Ryan?
I first became involved with Detective Hermosillo in reference to locating a vehicle that was in interest to Arizona police. Later, I became involved after a
Thank you, Blink.
complaint was put in for a welfare check
Thank you so
on
much.
juvenile J.J. Vallow.
Okay. Have you ever met the defendant, Chad Daybell?
I have.
Okay. Where did you meet him?
I met him when we issued the search warrant for his property in his kitchen.
Okay. Have you ever met the defendant, Lori Vallow?
I have.
Judge, could I have some foundation on the date, time, and place? They gave us the place, but the date and time would be helpful.
I'll lay that foundation. What date, you referenced a meeting defendant Daybell. What date did you meet him?
I don't recall the exact date. It was the date of the search warrant service.
Which search warrant are you referring to?
The search warrant where we searched the property, the Daybell property.
All right. Does June 9 sound like it might be that
June
day
9th would be correct.
of 2020? And what time of the day did you meet him?
We knocked on the door and entered the residence around 7 a.m.
Okay. Have you met the defendant, Lori Vallow?
That wasn't a good
I
way
have.
to wake up, was it?
Do you know the approximate date of when you met Lori Vallow?
That would have been November 26th, 2019.
Do you know approximately what time of day you met her?
It was in the AM.
Where did you meet her?
565 Pioneer Road, apartment number 175.
Was anyone else with you when you met her?
Yes, I was accompanied by Lieutenant Ron Ball and later was joined by Sergeant Kellen Wetton.
Okay. And what was the purpose of you meeting her that day?
We were trying to perform a welfare check of the welfare of J.J. Vallow.
Okay. Were you wearing a body camera that day?
I was.
Okay. And did your body camera record your meeting with Lori Vallow?
Yes, it did.
How many times did you speak with Lori Vallow that day?
2 different occasions that morning.
And generally speaking, what did you ask
And
her?
for those of you just peeking in, what we are doing is we are screening the preliminary hearing for Chad Daybell that happened in 2020, 3 years ago. We are gonna screen the whole preliminary hearing And then we're going to go through all of the interviews with like Melanie Gibb and Melanie Boudreau and all of them in preparation leading up to Chad Daybell's trial in April. So we're going to take about an hour or two, a couple of times a week, and kind of get through the prelim and then do all of the interviews. And that should get us just about to, I think, the end of March. And then we'll be all up to date, and our memory will be all, peaked, and we'll be ready for the trial.
Our focus was to inquire on the welfare or the location of J.J. Vallow and make sure he was okay.
Your Honor, we'd ask that the witness that states Exhibit 14 be shown to the defense and then handed to the witness.
The bailiff will hand Exhibit 14 to the defense. The bailiff has handed Exhibit 14 to the defendant, or the witness.
Detective, do you recognize State's Exhibit 14?
I do.
Have you, what is it?
It is the recordings from my body camera. There's two different recordings on this from the 26th of November 2019.
Okay. And have you reviewed the contents on that disc?
I have.
Are they true? Are the contents of that disc a true and accurate representation of what you saw that day?
They are.
And is it a true and accurate representation of, to the best of your knowledge, of what your body cam recorded?
Yes.
Your Honor, the state would ask that State's Exhibit 14 be entered into evidence.
Mr. Pryor?
If I may,
I think we can count on for the trial. So Judge Boyce is going to be running the cameras, right? Well, I don't mean he himself. He won't be running camera, but they apparently will have a court AV guy or woman who will be responsible for the video and the recording equipment. They're going to stream that on the YouTube. I guess Judge Boyce is going to have his own YouTube. I don't know if he'll have his own YouTube channel or the state of Idaho will do a YouTube, but somehow they're going to do it on the YouTube channel. And so I think we can probably anticipate the quality will be what we saw in the Lori Vallow sentencing. And as well as I do, the quality was horrible. I think it was intentional. I think they don't want us to be able to make out details. And so it was rather irritating and kind of infuriating that we couldn't get a closer look because we like facial, reactions and things like that. But I don't think we're going to have that. I think it's going to be a pretty standard, just a big, wide fish eye lens of the table, the defense table and the prosecution table. And I don't think we'll be able to zoom in and get any like detail or anything. So that, this kind of gives us, it kind of gives our brain a little bit of, a better picture of what each of these players looks like, because I think during the actual trial, we're going to be very frustrated that we won't have this good, this high quality recording that we obviously have for this particular hearing. So that's another reason why, it's kind of interesting to go back through and rewatch, because I think, like I said, when we get to the trial, I think it's going to be just what we saw with the sentencing, and it was pretty awful.
inquire in aid of objection.
You may.
Can you give me an idea, officer, as to when you reviewed that for its accuracy on a date and time?
Can you speak a little louder?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Will you
Can
pull that
tell me
microphone
What date and time did you review that to ensure? that
Get
there was
close to the
accurate copy of what
microphone.
transpired, on your interview with Ms. Fallow?
The last time I reviewed this was this morning.
Okay, all right. No further questions, Judge. Thank you.
Any objection to the admission of Exhibit 14, Mr.
No
Pryor?
objection, Judge. Thank you.
Exhibit 14 will be admitted.
Your Honor, we'd ask that this be placed into the DVD player.
You wish to publish it right now?
Yes, we wish that the state moves to publish it, Your Honor.
We'll have the bailiff or whoever's in charge of IT put that into the player. I'll remind the media that pursuant to my earlier ruling, I'm going to prohibit the photographs or the videotaping of the publishing of this video here in court. The court will be at ease for a moment while this is loading. Mr. Wood, take all the time you need.
Thank you. As soon as it pops up, we'll start it. Your Honor, may I approach the
You may. Please don your mask. Mr. Wood, do you need a brief recess so you can troubleshoot the technology here?
We may need to. We came in and tested this the other day and it worked just fine. So we might need just a second, Your Honor.
We'll be in recess for a moment. Thank you. Please be seated. We'll be back on the record, continuing with the direct examination of Lieutenant Ball. Is that correct? No, excuse me, it's
Stubbs.
Stubbs. I apologize. Detective Stubbs. Mr. Wood, have you worked out your technology issues there?
Yes, just want to thank Josh, the IT guy, for taking care of that for us.
He's very competent. You may proceed when you're ready.
Thank you. Detective, I'm gonna start playing this and then pause it and have you tell us what's going on.
I really
What do you
prefer
recommend it is?
this judge. And I agree, Diane. Chad is like, it's like he thinks he's one of the attorneys rather than the monster that buried those two children. So yeah, he's so cringy. He's a terrible guy.
This is my body cam footage as myself and Lieutenant Ball approach the apartment number 175 the first time on the 26th.
Okay.
Her car's out there too. In the back, it's blue. Blue Subaru.
Hi, you Lori. Lori, I'm Lieutenant Ball, Police Department. How are you? You got a minute? You alone or got help?
My brother's here.
Okay. This is Detective Stubbs.
Hello.
So, we're here.
Yeah, this is a big mess. I just talked to the guy on the phone.
And what did he ask you?
He was just saying that he wanted to do a well check on JJ.
So, JJ would be where?
He's in Arizona.
Who's he with in Arizona?
He's with one of my friends in Arizona.
Oh.
Hi.
Oh, you got a notepad?
No, want me to get one?
No. Come here. You mind if he comes in?
No, come on.
So,
Sorry.
who's the friend he's with?
My friend Melanie. Her
Melanie.
son has autism. Her name is Melanie Gibb. I gave him all the information on the phone.
Okay, so he can call him.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Discord.
Yeah. What is all this?
We're a little
What is it?
concerned
Why?
because, well, the officers who were here earlier
Yeah.
were checking and they got a bad vibe that like something was going on here because nobody knew anything about a child. They weren't talking.
It's because a
What's
lot of
going
stuff
on?
has gone on. If you want to know, it's a lot of stuff.
Feels
So
Well, that's why
bad
we're
for Larry and
concerned
Kay
because
Woodcock.
it just was kind of weird.
it is very weird. I've had to move around a lot. One of my brothers is trying to kill me. Not the brother that lives here, obviously. He's kind of my protector.
You evil
My other
wench.
brother was in with my husband who was trying to kill me for my $2 million life insurance policy. No way.
Now,
So a lot of stuff has gone on in this last year. It's been a horrible year for us. I've had to move around. And so I was going to move back to Arizona, put my son back in the school there because I tried to put him in school here, public school at Kennedy.
okay.
He went for 2 months. We tried it, but he had such a hard time. Now, the person who called is my sister-in-law, but she's his natural grandmother. He's adopted.
This woman is
By us.
so evil.
Okay, so her son, who's a drug addict,
Okay.
had a baby with a girl who's a drug addict, and they took him from, CPS took him.
Okay.
Gave him to
Yeah,
the
they should have
grandmother
let.
who came and got him, and then she wanted us to adopt him, which we did. And we loved
By
him and taken
us,
care.
who we
My
talking?
husband and I, who died earlier this year.
Okay.
He passed away. Since he
Sorry to
passed
hear that.
away, she's been trying to fight me for him and being really horrible to me and that kind of stuff. She's kind of the paternal friend.
Okay, thank
Does
you.
that make sense?
That's
I'm
what I
sorry.
needed. The paternal grandmother.
He has autism and ADHD. He doesn't really talk to people. Like he's very special needs. So I had him in a special needs school there. She was trying to. So what happened was, my husband, who we were married for 15 years and had raised all these 5 kids together, switched his life insurance policy to her right?
To,
To his sister,
okay,
who got $1 million when he died. And we got nothing for me to raise
Jesus
JJ, and all the kids got nothing, and everybody got nothing. She got $1 million.
Horrible woman.
So I knew she was gonna try to sue me for him, or,
JJ?
yeah, because she now has this $1 million, so she can hire people to help him, and I have nothing. 'cause my-
But you have
nothing,
legal
but
custody.
He's my son. I adopted him when
Right.
he was 2 years. We had him from the time he was 8 months old till 2 years old. So she does nothing that wants to cause me trouble. So I don't tell people the truth about where we are and what we're doing because of those reasons. So I look like a suspect, but I am not a good person. Raised all of my kids. I've done everything that I'm supposed to do in life, but everyone is causing me trouble right now. So
We don't want to cause.
She
a lot of trouble.
sounds
How long have you
nuts,
been here?
doesn't she?
we only been here since September.
Okay.
We moved up here in September. My daughter to go to BYUI.
Your daughter goes to BYUI?
Yeah.
Does she live here?
So it's been a nightmare.
Those two babies are already
I'm gonna go back to
dead.
Arizona so I can put him back in the special needs school.
When this
He
is
couldn't go to
going
school
on.
here. It was too hard for him. He would scream and cry, take him to school. The principal would have to come out, try to drag him out of the car. Like, it's too hard. But I just don't tell people where I am. I don't tell her where I am ever.
Okay.
And she doesn't have any legal rights to anything. Like, she's been horrible to me since my husband died.
My understanding, she never called you to try to get the child, hey, I'm interested in the child back, but
I
that,
know, but she sends me these emails with like the date and like she's putting up court stuff, like she's documenting. I haven't heard from him and all
She
this.
should be documenting
So I
nuts.
told her that he's fine, but
See, and we hadn't heard any of that as far as,
I'm just saying she's doing this as part of that.
Yeah.
Is my understanding.
and our only concern in this whole thing
Yeah, is that he's fine.
is the child.
I got it.
And so that's where we're at on the, and then
So
we
I
were just a
called
little
her.
weirded out when, and I understand now that we've heard your side of the story.
It's awful. I feel like I'm being tracked all the time. Like, why are police coming to my
Well,
door? What did I do?
they said they were out visiting with two guys, and I assume
Who is-
one's your brother.
Who was busy? Yeah.
Who was the other one? The other guy they were visiting with. There were two.
Visiting.
Well, we had two detectives over here trying to,
Looking for you a
Oh.
little while ago.
Oh, because I was at the store.
and they ran into probably one of your brothers in
My
the back
brother
here.
and his friend, probably.
Oh,
They've
who's
been
that?
moving. Chad.
Yeah, that is her husband at the time this conversation's happening. They're married.
Okay. All right.
It's just a mess. It's constantly causing me trouble.
Chad the Daybell?
He's an author.
Yeah, he's
Doesn't
a
he live like out in the-
delusional nut.
Chad Daybell, didn't his wife pass away recently?
Yeah, a week
Is that
ago.
I don't know,
I bet he is. Chad Daybell.
but it sounds familiar as an
I
author.
think I know one of his. He's got a couple of daughters.
He has lots of kids.
Okay. I'll bet it's safe. All right. Well, maybe anything else? Sorry to bother you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We don't mean to be a
I'm
problem.
sorry
We just-
that people are constantly knocking on my door. At my door, looking for me, and I just don't want to be
Crazy,
found, so.
crazy woman.
Have you had problems? Because I think we only had.
The reason I'm moving is because the brother that was going to kill me, that we found emails and texts with my husband at the time, came showing up here. So he found out where I was, and he was knocking on my door.
No, this was your brother?
One of my brothers.
He showed up here and was knocking on your door.
He lives in Kansas.
And you said something about you were getting threatening emails?
Well, no, just after my husband passed, I found emails and texts between them that they were planning all this stuff to get rid of me.
Do we need to worry about him coming over?
Well, that's why I'm moving back. I'm moving, and I'm not going to be in a place. I'm going to live with my friend, Melanie. Don't tell anybody her name, Gibb, because I don't want anything in my name. I put the apartment in my name, but I've been staying over here with my brother.
Did y'all hear that? She was going to live with Melanie Gibb.
I just
Give
want
up
to know
me,
if
so-
he shows
Live
back
with
up,
her.
You can call.
I still believe Melanie knew
That's what I'm
everything.
saying. Like, I just it's just a nightmare. I mean, I canceled the insurance policy since my husband passed, so there's no money if they give me. And what are they going to do with JJ and Ted? Like, what do people think?
Okay.
So.
Well, if you have a problem, shows back up, feel free to call us. We'll come and run him off or something. Okay? All right.
Appreciate it.
Okay, we'll get out of here. Safe one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See ya.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Not.
And Jason Mel and David Warwick. Absolutely, Diane. Absolutely. Yep.
Detective Stubbs, did you return to that same apartment that day?
Zulema
Yes,
Pastenis.
When Detective Hermosillo and Detective Hope could not contact Melanie Gibb a few minutes later from this encounter, we went back to her door to inquire about how we could get a hold of Melanie Gibb.
And is that what is on the second film file here?
That is
video file?
correct. So they want us to ask Lori if she would. Melanie is the friend.
Wasn't Melanie the one living up here? Supposed to be her daughter, Lori's daughter?
No, this was the friend that she's going back down to live with, she said.
Right. She's got a daughter named Melanie.
Let's just see if she will call and have Melanie get a hold of Hope and just do a verification. Because apparently she's not answering the phone down there.
Lori? Hi, Lori. Sorry to bother you again. We're having
Melanie,
get a hold of your friend down there, Melanie.
Well, they were going to Frozen 2 today, so they may be at the movies.
could you get a hold of her at some point and say, can you please call back the officer that's been trying to call you?
Okay, sure.
Because,
Yeah, because I think they are at the movies right now.
okay, he's been trying to call her, our other officer. She's not answering.
Okay.
But if they're at the movie, that's,
Probably at Frozen 2 right now,
yeah.
because that's one thing he wanted to do.
I'm frozen too.
I'm Frozen 2, it's so
Yeah.
cold here.
So-
I don't know if I can handle a whole winter here, that's probably why.
Yeah, so if she'll just return his call, that'd be great.
Okay.
Okay, thanks. Yes, sir.
Detective Stubbs, I asked you earlier about your, if you had any certifications regarding computer and cell phone forensics. Have you been involved in any analysis of cell phone records related to this case?
I have.
Okay. Are you familiar with location records which can be found on electronic devices?
I am.
Can you tell the court generally, explain generally about location records that can be found on electronic devices?
So it all will depend on the device itself, who the provider is that is tracking location, web searches, number of different apps will track your what you're doing.
Okay. And do you know how those records are generated?
Well, it just depends on the provider, what
Hey,
kind of stuff
Vicky.
that they are searching for, what their target, if you will, their target market is. It can be, what you searched for, so they can better plan for that stuff or GPS
I don't know.
data, latitude.
I don't know about you guys, but hearing those recordings of Lori and later on the recordings of Chad, to me it's so chilling to hear how easily they lie, right? It just rolls off their mouth just like that's got to be the biggest indicator of true evilness. It's people that can just look you in the face and tell you something that is just not true. Just not true. All to save your own skin. It's the worst. And I agree, Vicky. Larry and Kay are warriors. Absolute warriors at this point.
Longitude, dates and times that you do things.
Okay. Have you used location information from a cellular device successfully in any other cases?
I have.
Okay. Have you analyzed any location records of electronic devices as part of your investigation in this case?
Yes, I have.
Detective, are you familiar with Alex Cox?
I am familiar with him in this case, yes.
Okay. And do you know who he is?
I've never met him, but I know he is the brother to Lori Vallow Daybell and the brother-in-law to the defendant, Chad Daybell.
Okay. Do you know where Mr. Cox is now?
I have been told that Mr. Cox died in December 2019.
Mr. Pryor?
Hearsay.
Mr. Wood? There's been an objection as to hearsay.
I'll rephrase the question.
Okay.
Through your investigation, do you know of the death of Mr. Cox?
Yes.
Okay. Pursuant to your investigation, why were you interested in Alex Cox's Google data?
The reason we were interested was we knew Alex lived in an apartment very close to Lori. We also knew because of the relationship between Lori and Chad being, brother-in-law and sister, that Alex may have some information onto where the location of the children may be.
And were you able to obtain Alex Cox's Google location data?
Yes, we were.
How did you do that?
We issued a search warrant. We had information of many known phone numbers, email addresses for the individuals in this case. We obtained a search warrant that we issued to Google and received a return from them with results.
Okay. And you may have already answered this. Did the warrant ask for just Alex Cox's data or multiple users?
No, we were requesting multiple users from the information we had obtained.
Okay. When you received a return on that warrant, was that return accompanied by a certificate of authenticity?
Yes, it was.
Your Honor, the state would ask for what's been marked as State's Exhibit 15 to be shown to the defense and then handed to the witness.
Exhibit 15 will be shown to Mr. Pryor. Exhibit 15 is now being shown to the witness.
Detective, do you recognize that document?
I do.
What is it?
It's a certificate of authenticity that was accompanied the results of the search warrant from Google.
And have you reviewed that document before?
I have reviewed this document, yes.
And are you familiar with its contents?
I am.
Detective, is that document signed under penalty of perjury?
Yes, it was.
By whom?
The Andrew Jordan.
Okay. Does that certificate of authenticity state that the record was made from information transmitted by someone with personal knowledge?
Yes, in paragraph 1, it states that.
Does that certificate of authenticity state that the record was kept in the course of regular conducted activity of Google?
In paragraph 5, it states that as well.
And does the certificate of authenticity state that the record was that making the record was a regular practice of Google?
Also in paragraph 5, it states that, yes.
Okay. Your Honor, I would ask that that certificate States Exhibit 15 be entered into evidence.
No objection, Judge.
Exhibit 15 will be admitted.
Your Honor, I'd ask that what's been marked that States Exhibit 16 be shown to the defense and then handed to the witness.
Exhibit 16 is being handed to the witness.
Detective, do you recognize that document?
I do.
Have you seen it before?
I have.
And have you reviewed it?
I have reviewed this document, yes.
And are you familiar with its contents?
I'm sorry?
Are you familiar with its contents?
I am.
Detective, when you sent your search warrant for the accounts from Google that you talked about, did the accounts provided by Google include Google subscriber information?
Yes, that is what this document is in reference to.
Okay. And is this document a true and accurate representation of the subscriber information you received for one of those Google documents?
Yes, this is one that Google sent us for one of those accounts, yes.
Your Honor, the state would ask that States Exhibit 16 be entered into evidence.
No objection, Judge.
Exhibit 16 will be admitted.
Detective, can you look at the top of the first page of Exhibit 16?
Okay.
And do you see where it says Google subscriber information?
I do.
Is there a name identified with that subscriber information?
The name of Alex Cox.
Is there an email associated with that subscriber information?
There is, the email is homerjmaximus@gmail.com.
Is there any other data on that subscriber information page?
There is a subscriber phone number, which we had previously identified as belonging to Alex Cox.
Okay.
Sorry, I can't hear you.
Be sure and wait to completely finish the question before you answer.
Detective, when you received the return on that search warrant, what was the size of that document in terms of pages if it were to be printed out?
Oh, the size of this entire document was thousands of pages.
Okay. We've discussed Alex Cox's Google location data. If that were to be printed out, do you know approximately how many pages it would be?
So just the location data for this particular account, if you were to print it out, would have been over 28,000 pages.
And if you were to open that data up on a computer, what format does it come in?
If you opened it up, you would see it in what would be like an Excel spreadsheet.
Okay. And what kind of information is located on that spreadsheet in general for Google location data?
So for Google, it would be the date timestamps. It would be the latitude and longitude of the said, if you will, pings or pins that were placed. It would have a radius of error that Google has interpreted. It would have what they know as the device being used to access the Google system. And then there's another number that is really associated with Google and whatever inner workings they have that would have to be Google that explains it.
Okay. Due to the large size of the data, I think you said it was over 28,000 pages of user location data, correct?
Correct.
Have you prepared any summaries of data you found in that document?
I have prepared some, some documents.
Can you tell us about those documents?
So what I did was I took an aerial photograph and that I took specific dates and times of interest and just pinpointed on the map using GPS latitude, longitude, time date stamps to place pins on a map to show location.
Okay. And how many summaries have you prepared?
I've prepared 2 at this time.
Okay. And were those summaries prepared with data you verified from Alex Cox's Homer J. Maximus account?
Yes.
And that is the same data that you received included with that certificate of authenticity?
That is correct.
We introduced earlier. Okay. Your Honor, the state would ask for State's Exhibit, what's been marked as State's Exhibit 17, be shown to the defense and then handed to the witness.
Do you want to hand it to the witness or put it on the easel, Mr. Wood?
We can put it on the easel.
We'll just put it over the top of the previous exhibit.
Oh,
Would you like that handed directly to the witness?
Your Honor, I actually would like to have the, before I enter that into evidence. Well, yeah, before I ask for that, I'd ask for the State's Exhibit 17 to be entered into evidence.
Okay. Mr. Pryor, any objection to that?
I think a little more foundation would be necessary.
That's fine.
Hold up here, Madam Bailiff. Sounds like Mr. Wood is going to lay some more foundation. Would you like that exhibit handed to the witness?
Your Honor, yes, I'd be fine.
Okay.
Detective, do you recognize State's Exhibit 17?
I do. I prepared this.
Okay. What data did you use to prepare that with?
The location data that I had obtained from the Google account, Homer J. Maximus.
Okay. And Was that data verified with the Homer J. Maximus account?
As far as verified, that I have checked and double checked my locations from the map overview to the GPS or latitude, longitude given by Google.
Okay. And how did you prepare that?
Well, there's a number of ways you can prepare it. This particular aerial photograph, you can do this using Google Earth, Google Maps, Ping Maps, or Bing Maps, Microsoft, anyone. If you enter a location with the GPS coordinates, doesn't matter, from my experience, anyone that I've used will always come up with these same waypoints.
Okay. Your Honor, this time I'd ask the State's Exhibit 17 be entered into evidence. And I'd add that that's pursuant to Idaho Rule of Evidence 1006, which allows for summaries to be prepared in voluminous data.
Mr. Pryor?
Judge, I don't have a problem with how he's applying 501. The difficulty is he has a demonstrative exhibit that he's trying to mark without any foundation of what's on that in terms of the picture and what it represents. So there's still a foundation problem here.
State's more than happy to lay that foundation, Your Honor.
I'd like that laid out so that there's a clear record of exactly what that picture that is in Officer Stubbs' hands represents. So I need some more foundation in that regard, Judge.
All right.
Detective
Mr. Woods,
Stubbs,
please do so.
the base layer of that summary document you have, what does it purport to be?
This overhead view is of the property of 202 East, 1900 North, the Chad Daybell property.
Okay. And have you been at that property?
I have been at this property, yes.
And are you familiar with the layout of the property and landmarks on that property?
I am.
Okay. And is that base layer, that image, is that a true and accurate representation, to your knowledge, of what that property looks like?
It is.
Okay. And then what layers have you added to that summary?
So besides the photograph itself, I have added a, if you will, type of table of contents at the bottom where I can explain the other things that I put on here, which would be red triangles that are specified by a number next to them that correlate with the latitude and longitude that I have placed on this map. Other than those things, that is the only thing I've added to this photograph.
Okay. Your Honor, at this time, the state would move
There
forward.
won't be an objection this time.
Exhibit 17 will be admitted.
Your Honor, before 17 is published, the state would ask that what's been marked as State's Exhibit 18 would be shown to the defense and then handed to the witness.
Yeah, it's really awful how these types of women seem to be able to find certain types of men that they manipulate to do the most extraordinary things. Lori Vallow, Amber Heard. It's very strange.
Exhibit 18 will be handed to the witness.
Detective, do you recognize State's Exhibit 18?
I do.
Is it one of the summaries that you testified to earlier?
Yes, this is a second summary.
Did you prepare that summary with data you verified came from Alex Cox's Homer J. Maximus Google account?
Yes, I did.
What is the base layer of that image purport to be?
The base layer of this is the apartment complex at 565 Pioneer Road, where both Lori Vallow, Daybell, and Alex Cox resided.
Judge, and I want to be clear that he's referring to Lori Vallow and Alex Cox, and he did use the Daybell last name, but I want to make it clear that he's in no way implying that Chad Daybell was part of that. Is that correct? Living in that residence?
As living here?
As living in that residence that's in your hand right now?
That's correct.
Just so we have a clear record, Judge, because the Daybell name was used.
The record will so reflect.
How did you prepare that summary?
Again, this was an aerial photograph taken. There's been a couple layers added to this. This image I received from our GIS department, which is the department of the city who maps, if you will, all of the city. Also their, if you will, the boundaries of residents and so forth and so on with addresses and so forth. So the second layer shows these apartments and the apartment numbers associated with the individual apartments. Again, my table of contents at the bottom right, that I received that data off of the Google location services I had received from Google with the Homer J. Maximus account.
Okay. Your Honor, the state would ask that State's Exhibit 18 be entered into evidence.
Judge, I would ask that there's an identifying factor telling me the date of that summary, because there's been no representation of the exact date that that summary represents, so I would like that from the witness.
There's been an objection as to foundation with the summary. Mr. Wood, do you wish to lay that objection?
Detective, what are the dates associated with the data you entered onto that image?
The reference numbers, is that what we're referring to? The GPS coordinates I placed on here?
Yes.
They are September 9th, 3 of those on September 9th. Also, September 14th and September 6th are all dates that I've associated on this map.
Okay. Your Honor, this time we'd ask that State's Exhibit 18 be entered into evidence.
Judge, just clarification in lieu of objection, if I may.
Mr. Pryor, if you'll speak up just a little bit, I'm having
Sorry,
difficulty.
just clarification and if I can inquire in aid of objection, Judge, just very briefly.
You may.
Thank you, Your Honor. Officer, September 9th, you said there are 3 readings at that particular point. Is that correct?
I have mapped 3 different,
Right.
Yes.
And those represent just Alex Cox. Is that correct?
not Alex Cox, but the device belonging to Alex Cox.
Okay. And then on the 14th of September, it's the device belonging to Alex Cox as well. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And then on the 6th of September, it's the device belonging to Alex Cox. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And you already foresaw, excuse me, you already anticipated my question is that's merely just a device that in no way can establish whether or not the person is present at the time of those locations. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you. Nothing else, Judge. Thank you.
Mr. Pryor, I feel like your questions were cross-examination questions. Any objection to the admission of Exhibit 18?
No, Judge.
Exhibit 18 will be admitted.
Thank you. Your Honor, I'd ask that Exhibit 18 be published and be placed on the easel.
Would you like that placed over the previous exhibit that's on the easel, Mr. Wood?
Yes, please. Or
Do you want,
whatever's easiest for court personnel.
do you want both of those summaries to be visible as you're questioning the witness?
One at a time, Your Honor. We'll start with 18, then go back to 17.
Okay, why don't we take a brief recess right now? We're going to crank the air conditioner in this courtroom for just a moment, see if we can cool it down by 10 or 50 degrees. And we'll go back on the record here in 15 minutes. It's 2:30, so why don't we plan on going back on the record at about 10 minutes to 3 o'clock.
Thank you, Judge.
I can't stand to look at the dude. I just can't even stand it. He just He's so gross. You doubt that Pryor is his daddy? Watch this. Watch when they come in the courtroom. Watch how they walk, their body language. Not only do they look alike, they move just alike. Watch when they come in the door. Watch. Watch. Same people. Ugh. Ugh. Can't take it.
We were in the middle of direct examination of Detective Stubbs. And Mr. Wood, I think you had just
It is like my cousin Penny.
17 and 18 into evidence. It looks like you have 18 on the easel right now. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, you may proceed with your direct examination.
Your Honor, I wonder if I could adjust that so that I can see easel as well.
That's fine. Do you need to scoot it back towards the wall?
I think so.
I wish this was the judge. I like him so much better than I like Judge Boyce.
Your Honor, due to the nature of what Detective Stubbs is going to be testifying to, we'd ask that he be able to stand next to the easel and put on a mask.
That's fine. Mr. Wood, why don't you don yours while he does that? There's a laser pointer as well, Mr. Wood. I don't know if you've explained that to Detective Stubbs. Okay. Hold up here. Do we, if he's going to be touching the exhibit, why don't we put some gloves on the witness here if there's going to be anybody else that's touching it? There's some right here. It's fine.
All right, Detective, now that Exhibit 18 has been published, can you, since we took a break, can you just briefly summarize again what Exhibit 18 is and how you prepared it?
I'm sorry, y'all. Does he look like he's got an IQ of about 15?
Of this apartment
He
complex.
looks like his brain is
April 2000
out to lunch.
is when the photograph was taken. What we did was we took, we made this table of contents here, which I numbered 1, 2, 3, 8, and 9. Those numbers correlate with the red triangles that I have placed on this map in 2 different locations.
They have the same chin, they have the same nose, they have the same eyebrows, the same hairline. They gotta be related. I'm serious. Look at their mouths and their chins.
Longitudes
They gotta be related.
with these triangles. Now, also accompanied on this map, along with those records from the Excel spreadsheet, as I mentioned, 28,000 plus pages. The number here, and the reference number, on the far left column of that Excel spreadsheet is the quick reference 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on down the page. This number correlates with that line item, if you will. Next are the coordinates that Google provided for us. Next to that is the date and time that these locations were logged through Google on that account. And the very last line over here is margin or radius of error from these findings from Google.
And are all the margins of error the same?
No. Depending on the one, they range, as you can see here, if you can see, from 4 meters and a couple at 15-meter radius of air.
Okay. On Exhibit 18, why did you focus on the coordinates you focused on?
Mainly because of two things. These are two residents where Alex Cox resided in 107 and that Lori Vallow Daybell resided in 175.
Okay. Was there anything significant about the dates?
As far as the dates go, 1, 2, and 3 are dated the 9th of September, 2019, in the early morning hours of that day.
What is the timestamp on, can you point to pin number 3?
Here in the parking lot.
And what is the timestamp on that?
Number 3 is 02:42 hours and 2 seconds.
Okay. And what was the date on that?
That would be September 9th,
Okay.
2019.
And can you point to pin number 2?
Pin number 2 is almost in the same location in the parking lot.
And what is the timestamp on that?
Pin number 2 is 02:42 and 11 seconds.
Okay. And can you point at pin number 1?
Same location at this triangle here.
Okay. And what is the timestamp on that?
That would be 03:37:22.
Okay. What is the margin of error on pin number 3?
Pin number 3 is at 4 meters.
What is the margin of
Judge,
error?
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. He said 4 meters or 4D?
4.
4, thank you.
What is the margin of error on pin number 2?
4 meters.
And what is the margin of error on pin number 1?
4 meters.
Okay. Now, let's talk really quickly about the timestamp. When you receive Google records, are they in mountain time?
No.
How is the time relayed on the Google location data?
So on the Excel spreadsheet, they would be in UTC time.
Okay.
UTC here during that time of year is UTC -6 hours.
Okay, thank you. Can you point at pin number 8? Actually, I'm going to ask you to point to pin number 9 first.
Pin number 9 is over in this area here.
Okay. What is the timestamp on pin number 9?
Pin number 9 would be September 6th, 2019 at 2:56 a.m. and 13 seconds.
Okay, and what's the margin of error or radius of error on that?
15 meters.
Okay. And can you give us the same information on pin number 8?
Pin number 8 is the 14th of September, 2019 at 01:21 and 43 seconds in the a.m.
And what is the margin or radius of error on pin number 8?
That again is 15 meters.
All right. Your Honor, I'd ask to publish State's Exhibit 17 at this time.
No objection.
Now, the easel is Exhibit 17, is that correct, Mr. Wood?
Yes. And again, just to clarify for the record, due to taken a break. Can you just briefly summarize again what State's Exhibit 17 is?
This is an aerial photograph of the Chad Daybell property.
Okay, and where is that located?
202 East 1900 South in Fremont County.
And did you prepare that summary in the same manner as State's Exhibit 18?
Yes, I did.
Okay. How many data points have you plotted on that summary?
4 data points.
Okay. Can you point to data point or location number 5?
Location number 5 is in this area here.
Okay. What is the timestamp on that?
Yeah, my cousin Chinny.
Timestamp
That is hilarious.
September 9th,
Absolutely.
2019 at 9:21 and 36 seconds in the AM.
Okay, what's the margin of error on that?
That would be 6 meters.
Can you point to location number 4?
This area here,
Mm-hmm. What is the timestamp on that?
timestamp of September 9th, 2019 at 10:57 and 03 seconds in the AM,
And what's the margin of error?
5 meters.
Detective, can you point at location 7 on that summary?
Here,
Yes. What is the timestamp on location 7?
timestamp of 09:56 and 28 seconds in the AM,
Okay. What's the margin of error on that?
4 meters.
And finally, can you point to location number 6?
Number 6 is in the same area, general area.
And what is the timestamp on that?
9/23/2019 at 10:02:19 hours in the AM,
And what's the margin of error?
3 meters.
Thank you. Detective, I can take your seat again.
Detective, when you've been seated, you can take off your glove and mask if you'd like.
Detective, you testified about the contents of the Homer J. Maximus Google location data. Are there other data points located on the Daybell property in that, in the data that was given to you on your search warrant return?
There are additional data points in the area, yes.
And are there additional data points near or on the, near the Lori Vallow apartment at 565 Pioneer Road?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a reason you didn't map out all the data points on the Homer J. Maximus Google location data?
Well, the reason being is because the file is so massive that it would take, I can't even imagine how long it would take to put all the waypoints on a map.
Okay. Say has no further questions at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Wood. Cross-examination, Mr. Pryor.
Thank you, Judge. Initially, when you went out there for the interview of Miss Vallow, and I believe that was in November, is that right?
That is correct.
And the date in November was what, officer?
The 26th.
Okay. Now, the purpose of that initial visit was a welfare check, was it not?
It was.
Okay, so it was a preliminary matter, is that correct?
Yes.
And you're a detective with which law enforcement agency?
The Rexburg Police Department.
And as the Rexburg Police Department, is it your policy that even for preliminary matters, such as a welfare check, you are required to have your body cam on?
It is not a requirement. However, since I've been issued a body camera, I always make it a practice to wear it when I go to talk to people outside the office.
And that is because you want to accurately and correctly reflect what someone says to you. Wouldn't that be the case?
That's right.
And you want to accurately provide a record of what was transpired because people make mistakes, correct?
Yes, people can make mistakes.
And Well, police officers are obviously people as well, and police officers make mistakes when they're in the course of doing an investigation. There are times when they may not recite things exactly the way they are. So a camera is a tool to help you do that. Is that correct?
Your Honor, I'm going to object. I think that's more testimony than it is a question.
Mr. Pryor, what's your question?
The question is that it's a good practice to have a body cam and record a conversation when you're interviewing any witness, correct?
That is my personal feeling for me.
And you're doing that out of experience, correct?
Correct.
Now, there was some previous testimony about Mr. Cox residing in Unit 175. Do you have any information that suggests he was residing in Unit 175?
I don't have that knowledge whether he was or wasn't residing, other than my body cam footage saying that he was there.
Okay. And during the time that you went there on the 26th of November, Mr. Daybell wasn't there, correct?
That day, I never saw for myself Mr. Daybell.
And there was an acknowledgement that her brother was there, though, correct?
That is correct.
And then on the second trip, I don't recall seeing whether there was an acknowledgement that Mr. Cox was there. Was he there again the second time, do you recall?
I do not know.
Okay. All right. But again, you didn't see Mr. Daybell there, correct?
That is correct.
And your belief is that when you went to Unit 175, it was because you believed that was Lori Vallow's residence. Is that right?
That is right.
Okay. And your data points seem to suggest that you're looking at Unit 175 and Unit 107.
Correct.
And there's a reason for that, is there not?
Yes.
That's because somebody lives in Unit 107, right?
We believed one of the family members lived in
And who would
107.
that be?
Alex Cox.
And who lives in 175?
Lori Vallow.
Okay. So just so we put this into terms that I can understand, when you're talking about 4 meters, you're talking approximately 12 feet.
Approximately.
And when you're talking about 15 meters, you're talking about 45 feet.
Approximately.
Okay. I am curious, and this is in the way of an explanation. When you're talking UC time -6, give me an example of what UC time -6 is. It looks like the clock says 3:05. So what would be an example of that?
Well, if you will, there's a point where they actually start recording time. And as you go through time zones, you gain or lose whatever an hour from the starting point of, if you will, a time starting.
Okay,
And then because we're in mountain time,
right.
at that time of year, you take the general time and you subtract 6 hours from that.
So when you say 242 in pin number 2, in this example, and it's 242, do we go back 6 hours earlier?
No, you would add 6 from UTC time. You minus 6 to
So
get to our time
If I
zone.
could ask you to go back up to the exhibit, would you mind doing that for me?
Mr. Pryor, Exhibit 17 or Exhibit 18?
Well, I'm going to start with 17, then we'll go to 18 after that. Because I think 17 is still up there, is it not, officer? All right, so that one is number.
This is 17.
That's right. I'm sorry, maybe I misspoke. So let's talk with pin number 5. On pin number 5, you said it was on September 9th, correct? And you put down the time as 9:21 a.m. Is that correct, officer? All right. And then you put down the time of variance or margin of error, I guess is the appropriate term, based on what I've read, and margin of error is 6 meters, right?
Correct.
So is that actually 9:21 a.m. on September 9th, or is there a additional time that needs to be added to that?
It was, in our time, 9:21.
Okay,
However, when you talk to a carrier of a phone or Google or whoever else, they generally send you this layout in UTC time. So depending on if you're on the East Coast, if you're here, wherever you are, you can do that margin and deduct those hours or add.
so you're the one who came up with the calculation as to what these proximate times are, is that correct?
The only thing I did was minus UTC time -6 to get our local time.
Okay, all right. And then again, on number 7, pin number 7, what was the time on that one?
09:56 and 28 seconds in the AM.
And those points that you're talking about reflect a device that was owned by Alex Cox, is that correct?
The Google states belong to Alex Cox.
Okay. And on the items that were sent on the house, or excuse me, the apartments, those times and those pins were a reflection of a device that was owned by Alex Cox, is that correct?
The same device.
Okay, all right. Thank you, officer. Go ahead, you can return to your seat. Can you tell me what the range of summaries is in this particular case? In other words, the start time for which range you subpoenaed Google and the end time for which range you ended. You're reflecting about 28,000 pages of documents. I'd like to know what the range is, the start range and the stop range.
You know, I would have to actually look at the search warrant again to be sure of the dates we requested.
Well, my recollection is we admitted that, did we not, as exhibit?
Search warrant 2019-86.
Okay. Do you have at least a recollection of what it may be?
From what I remember, and first part of September.
Okay.
Through December.
Through December?
Through when we served the search warrant.
Okay. All right. So we don't know how many times from September through December that those devices were on the Daybell property then, correct?
We don't have a total number at this time, no.
Are you working on that?
There is things being worked on at this time,
Are
yes.
you working on that?
I am working with members of the FBI CAS team to come up with those numbers.
Okay, so in other words, we're going to, at some point in the future, there'll be a complete analysis of every date that this particular device or devices was not only in the apartment, but also on the Daybell property. That'll be forthcoming, I can assume that, correct?
Well, I can't answer for exactly what the CAS team is doing, but they are doing additional analysis on those times and those coordinates.
Okay. And that information has been preserved in the event there needs to be someone else taking a look at that as well, correct?
That is correct.
Did you have an occasion to talk with Mr. Daybell at any time?
Sorry, I can't hear you.
Did you have an occasion to talk to Mr. Daybell at any time?
No.
You hesitated. Why is that?
I was trying to remember if I had said stand right over here or whatever while he was in the kitchen. I don't exactly recall.
Okay, so there's no recorded conversation or body cam of Mr. Daybell that you have in your possession. Is that correct?
I did have my body camera on that day as well.
Okay.
Have I reviewed that as of the last little bit? I have not.
Have you provided that to the prosecuting attorney?
I believe he has copies.
All right. Judge, I have nothing else at this point. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wood, any redirect?
Not at this time, Your Honor.
Thank you, Detective Stubbs. You can be excused from the witness stand. That exhibit, which number exhibit is that? 16, thank you. Are there any other exhibits there in the witness cubicle? Okay. We'll allow cleaning to take place of the witness cubicle. Mr. Wood, who do you intend on calling as your next witness?
Your Honor, Spencer Ramos for the state. The state would next call Wynn Hill.
Say that one more time.
Wynn Hill?
Wynn Hill?
Yes, Judge.
Mr. Wood, can I have the bailiff put that exhibit backwards again?
Yes.
You can leave that on there, Mr. Bailiff. If you just want to turn it around backwards and set it against the wall. Mr. Hill, if you'll come forward, stand in front of this witness chair, raise your right arm and face the clerk. Stand right there in front of the plexiglass and look at the clerk right here. Raise your right arm.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give in this cause now shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
You can be seated here in the witness chair, Mr. Hill. Once you're seated, Mr. Hill, you may take off your mask. Mr. Wood, you may inquire.
Thank you, Judge. And again, Spencer Ramos for the record.
Mr. Rammel, I apologize. You may inquire.
Thank you, Judge. Can I have you state your full name and spell that name for the record, please?
My name is Wynn Hill, Wynnhill,
Mr. Hill, where are you employed?
at Brigham Young University, Idaho.
And how long have you been employed at BYU Idaho?
Yeah, just over 14 years.
And what is your current role at the university?
I currently serve as the Dean of Students there.
Does BYU Idaho use a student management system?
We do.
Are you familiar with that system?
I am.
How so?
Yeah, I work in the student life area, and so we have a student life management system that connects to the larger student management system.
Mr. Hill, will you scoot a little closer to the microphone?
Sure.
Pull that microphone down a little bit, name it right at your chin,
There we go.
and then up at your mouth. That's great.
Great.
What information does your student management system hold?
Yeah, it holds information from the application process and other student enrollment information on a student.
Does your system allow you to look up current students attending BYU Idaho?
Yes.
Does your system allow you to look up past students
Yes.
that have attended BYU Idaho? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Does your system allow you to look up individuals who have applied but are not currently attending BYU
Yes.
Idaho?
It does.
Did you check your registration system for a specific individual who requested Rexford Police Department in relation, to a missing persons investigation?
I did.
Who was that individual you checked for?
I believe they gave me the name of Tylee Ryan, Tylee Cox, Tylee Vallow. I checked all of those names with the date of birth of 9/24/02.
And can you tell me the date that you did that?
I can. It was February 28th,
And can you tell me-
2020. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you tell me where you were when you checked it?
I believe I was in my office
On campus?
on campus. Yes.
And what was the result of that check?
Yeah, we couldn't find any information on that person.
So it's your testimony that names Tylee Ryan, Tylee Cox, and Tylee Vallow with the corresponding date of birth, September 24th, 2002, has never applied to BYU Idaho or has never been a student at BYU Idaho.
According to our records.
Judge, that's
Right.
all I have. No questions, Judge. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nguyen. You can be excused from the witness stand. Mr. Rammel, may this witness be excused from the court?
From the state's perspective, yes.
No objection, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Hill, for appearing. Mr. Rammel, you can call the next witness as well.
Your Honor, I'll take care of the next witness. The state calls Nona Gibb.
Make sure you thank you.
Your Honor, the state requested 5 minutes.
Yes, well, we'll take that and see if we can bring attention down.
All right.
Okay, everybody. We are 2.5 hours in. I think we're gonna put an end to this. It's 10 o'clock, time for bed. So hey Tiffy, how are you? So thank y'all so much for being here. Let me take note of where we're at, where we will start tomorrow. Melanie Gibb. Thanks, Melanie Gibb. Yeah, there she is. There she is. Okay, so tomorrow we will start with Melanie Gibb or Warwick or whatever her name is now, right? Thank you, Vicky Carpenter. Thank you so much for hanging out with us and kind of just, kind of going through some of the old stuff, getting ready for the new stuff. And I hope everybody has a good Sunday night and a great Monday morning. And I will see you guys tomorrow. All right. I sure do appreciate you guys being here and hanging out with me. And I'll see y'all tomorrow. Sweet dreams.